Bigfooting. But if you talk to any of us that are doing research, the sooner we all kind of get together and share our wisdom and knowledge, the sooner we're going to get to the truths. So I think it's awesome that you were proud enough to say, yeah, I'm into all of it, because back in the day people wouldn't do that. And you still have people that are either Bigfoot or UFOs or ghosts, and it's like, I don't dabble on the other side. But if you look into that, why? Because once again, it could be humility with it. People could shame you for it, stuff like that. Just know, today, you're in a safe spot. You see all these people around with you? These are the people that would go into the woods at midnight and call out into the darkness and ask you to call back. Everyone in here, pardon my French, is a badass or thinking about being it. Sorry, Dad, I got little kids. Bad butt. I meant to say bad butt back there. But yeah, man, you're in a safe place. Okay, with our first drawing, it's going to be Feed Your Wild Side. So, if anybody wants a good little collectible, we're going to do the drawing right now. Okay, purple ticket, everybody, here we go. Number 39. You know how when we go out there, you always find a spot. You're like, I love this spot. This is my favorite spot in the woods. There's a reason. So when you get there, leave a little offering and just say, thank you so much for letting me be here. We were given free will, and that free will, with that comes an amazing curiosity. So nothing that you're doing is wrong. You're there because you're meant to be there. And then after that, I would say hold the space. You don't need to go trekking around, even though that's fun because it kind of spooks the heck out of you as you're walking through in the dark. But set your intention in space and you watch. If they're there, or whatever is there, it will come to you. And you will hear it. And then in that moment, you'll decide whether this wisdom I'm giving you was good or it was bad. Because not everybody loves it. And that's another thing to understand. Once you get to the end of the fringe and something calls back, it may not be for you. But I'd like to argue that if you're here, it absolutely is. And it's, I don't know, it's like seeing a unicorn, seeing Loch Ness, seeing Bigfoot. Everyone tells you it's not real. So like, be careful, it's a wormhole. Because then that happens, and then you're like, well, what else are they lying about? What else is true? And then that begins the adventure. And when that happens, you talk to anyone in here at tables, anyone that's doing it, and they will be a mentor to help get you to the next step. So anyway, Expedition Bigfoot ended. That was horrible. Cried about it for a long time. Thank God she's absolutely amazing and stuck by me. But now, what do we like? Even more than a big failure? A rebirth. And so I've started a new company with Stacy Brown and James Brost, Josh Watson, all of our friends, and here's the beauty, because I don't like to say too many negative things about anything. Expedition Bigfoot is a beautiful show. You watch that, it's just beautiful. It's shot well, it's acted, everything's good about it. But with all those kind of shows, you can't truly be who you are. I'm a goofy person. I love this. I want to get down, crawl on the ground. Where do we have to go? We have to go in the basement, crawl through, make a woo, I'm all in. They don't let you be that way on TV. Everyone's got to be stoic, like Bigfoot. Everyone's a stoic and almost angry Bigfoot model, And so maybe I got lucky. Maybe by failing that hard in front of everyone, it's because I was meant to now go and do something where I can truly be me. And so I'm excited about that. This is going to be a big year. We have a big movie coming out, the Skunk Ape Experiments. Look for it. It is horror-based, so just know it's hardcore. We're the hardcore side of the paranormal world. But for those of you that want a little something new and extra, give it a check. Anyway, with that said, that's kind of my background. We've got so many wonderful people to speak, so if I'm to the side and we can be quiet, I'd love to talk with you guys about your experiences and share any wisdom I have with you. But is it 9:30? Are we? Oh, 9. Well, okay, we got a little more time. Okay. I think Phyllis has a one.
Station 8 here in Charlotte County has a swamp buggy firefighting truck called the Skunk Ape. So they're invited. They're coming here at noon. We have a plaque and that gift basket for the fire department. Hopefully it will be pouring rain because there's going to be time for a photo shoot out there with them. And Bigfoot will be joining us around that time for photos. So during the lunch break from 12 to 1:30, we have the fire department, we have some people who want to share, we're going to be doing more door prizes. And yeah, because all those tickets are accounted for and there's a lot of empty seats, so if they're not here, then we'll just pull a different ticket. Okay,
So we have a little time. I'll just do one story. So for those of us that squatch and we're lucky enough to actually have an experience in the woods, you guys can all relate to this. So working on finding Bigfoot, the beauty of it is we go to the right spots. You know, our research leads us to a place. A lot of times we're there years later because that's just the manner of it. But sometimes you hit it just right. And I don't know if you guys remember, but in Tyler, Maine, there was a young man that put out a video of a daytime squatch. And it was walking around in the woods. You know, daytime squat shots, you're always like, all right, it could be fake, right? You know, because that's not normal, but what the hell is normal? And this thing is walking along and kind of like moaning in the back. Sorry, buddy. And just going back and forth. It was really interesting because, I don't know, I hadn't really seen a video like that. It was almost as if, you know, your mind wanders, is like, is this in pain? Like, it almost sounded like it's in like some kind of emotional pain or something. And hey, if they're some type of relic hominid and they have a base intelligence, then why wouldn't they feel like us? But long story short, the kid put the video out. What happened? Every kid at school, because right, isn't growing up, the fact that we all survived school and the bullying that we all felt at some point or another, amazing. But so they bullied him, and you know, people give reality TV a bad rap, but in some ways it can be good because we showed up. And once again, I got to give this to the cast. They were like, "We're going. We want to meet this kid and tell this kid he's not crazy." So we went. And we stood in solidarity with him. And then afterwards, that kid was a little more popular in school. How about that? They stopped. Oh, you're on TV? Wait, that's real? You know. So and that felt good because I don't like bullying at all. But anyway, we went there and we went out. And I'll do the story quick because it's a much bigger story. But imagine the darkest, wettest night of the year. I mean, the clouds have come down from the sky and are sitting in the forest of Maine, just dripping with moisture and verdant right after everything kind of explodes. So I go in, the team goes out, we have all this activity, we have wood knocks, we're hearing them, they're walking, but they don't see them, because honestly, visibility was like this. So, kind of a dangerous time to be in the woods. My theory was, as they come back in, they're kind of like a lure, right? So if you're this intelligent creature, this is your kingdom, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of stinky humans walking around, like yelling at you and making noise, I'd come out and watch them too. It's just like a big lure of dum-dums in the woods. So I figured they just follow them back to camp, kind of, but which is also like, if that's their territory, they escort you out, just like any of us would do if someone was on our lawn or whatnot. So as they're coming back in, 2, 3 in the morning, on the darkest, creepiest, scariest night of the year, I go into the woods. And there's this old logging road that goes down into the back. And like I said, you can't see anything. And I brought 2 apples, once again, to give an offering. So I take the first one, and I turn, and I just throw this way. What I couldn't see was like a tree right here. So it's literally like, dum dum. And you know, you're trying not to be scared, you know what I mean? And you're like, I'm a squatcher, I can do this is what I do for a living. But let's be real, inside I'm like, oh God, what if something does happen? What am I gonna do? So that does it, and for a second I just feel like an idiot. I'm like, if there's something watching me in the woods, they're like, who's this guy? Like, you know? So I take the second one and I chuck it straight down the road. And it probably lands back there in the kitchen, you know, not too far. But what scared me, when I realized that I was actually scared and not a cool Bigfooter, is because it landed, apparently it was so much water, so there was like a foot, maybe 2 feet of water where it just, you know, it's Maine, everything's wet up there. And it landed in the water and it scared me. It went kaboosh, and I was like, ugh. So once again, I'm like, oh God, would you calm down? What's wrong with you? You know, the Squatch is out there, we can't talk to him, he's gonna have a heart attack, you know? And so I calm down and I'm like, okay, I'm back. And then, listen, if anyone tells you there's only one technique that works best, try it, but nobody knows, and everyone's different, everyone's energy is different, frequency, it's just, do what you feel. We gotta get back to trusting our gut and not up here. It's the youngest part of us. First thing that forms, second thing that forms up here. You know, all of you know, when your gut tells you about someone, about something, it's usually right. So my gut tells me, with some great apes, that you get down and they'll do this with their hand actually. So the big gorilla, you know, if they made a mistake or whatnot, and when the big guy is like, all right, you're in my good graces, they'll run their fingers on their hand. And, you know, and then once they do that, then that one can begin acting normal again. So I don't know what's going on in the woods, but I'm going to try that. I'm like, that seems to me, because I always want to approach from respect. And I think if you approach from, I've entered your house, so to speak, and I'm here to play by your rules, it works. So I get down on one knee and I'm doing this, and no lie, at, like I said, 2, 3 in the morning, darkest, scariest, non-visible time of the year, something walks out of the woods, and you hear it enter the water, and then picks the apple up, silence. So I've already been scared twice, and you guys know, normally when you're scared, the second time it's not as bad. So now I'm on the ground, and why the hell did I go in the woods alone, like idiot? And I'm just shaking, and it took me a little while to calm down, and I stopped. And when I did, nothing happened, nothing. I get up and I go, okay, that was real, right? Because this is the other thing. If anyone's seen a UFO, seen a squatch, ghost, anything, it happens so quick that it's so easy right after it to go, I imagine that. Even though you didn't. You know you didn't, but you're like, nah, I imagine that. So I take little rocks and I start throwing it because I didn't have anything else. And honestly, I didn't expect it to work. And you realize that too. You're like, I guess I really didn't think this would work. I start throwing rocks. And what's interesting about it is I didn't notice until however many rocks in, but all of a sudden, because once again, like I said, be present. There was nothing else going on. I just had adrenaline. I was hearing everything. And just as I would throw a rock and my rock would land, something would land near me. So whatever was out there with zero visibility was dropping rocks or little, whatever, pebbles right near me as I was doing it. And then when I had the aha moment, because my face must have lit up, I was like, I did one more, and then it was over. And that's what I'm telling you. Prepare yourself to be subtle when you go on these hunts. It's not going to be this huge explosion. If you get that, congratulations. That's 1 in a million, or I would say 1 in a billion. So just be prepared for something very subtle. We call it high strangeness, synchronicity, like whatever you want to call it, it's okay, the labeling is fine. But that's how you're going to get your experiences, most of them. So anyway, that happened. Long story short, I come back. They're all in the food line. Bobo's shuffling through the food line. Out of the way! Out of the way! He's just so hungry, you know, like walking the woods. This is when Bobo was Bobo, you know, the squatches would come out and go, what are you doing out here, bro? We're supposed to be in the woods, you know? So he's in line, and I'm like, you know, first time in my life, like, now I really believe. Because you tell me there's a bunch of eccentric billionaires running around the woods, like, messing with all of us, okay, it's possible. But most likely, that's not the case. There's a phenomenon happening. So I'm just following in the line, and I just remember thinking, they're real. And I said to myself a few times, and finally I look at him, like, big spike, little spike, and I'm like, they're real. And he's like, yeah, obviously they're real. That's why we're here, you idiot. You know? And he keeps going, and I just stayed next to him. You know when you have like a real experience, you can't hide it. You're just like, you're in wonder. You're like, wow. And finally he looked at me and he goes, wait, you saw it? And I was like, I didn't see it, but this is what happened. And then the whole crew erupted. And we heard it actually moving in the woods around. I mean, it was there. It was there. And we just, like usual, you can't get to it. And the farther you guys go in your research, you're going to run into that wall, and it's going to frustrate you. And if any of you come up with something that helps us step beyond that wall and get closer when these happen, share. Please share. Or you don't have to, but it would be awesome. This is what some of us love, and we don't have all the answers, you know? And I think collectively as a community, we can get there faster. Now, I will.
No, I'm not on that wall. I'm not on that.
I thought you looked familiar.
I know. It's just, you know, it's the old cops episodes. I wasn't the cop. I was the other side. But America's Most Wanted. Yeah, I really enjoy. I'm going to start calling him Mr. 8-Pager. In the next magazine, which comes out in about 2 weeks, I'm not going to do a promotional thing, but I'm going to say something. In 2 weeks, the magazine comes out. He has 8 pages in my magazine. Do you know how much 8 pages in a magazine is like?
I'm a talker, apparently.
So, you know, not only am I, you know, from law enforcement, I'm obviously from the psychiatric trade because I did an intervention, and it turned out to be 8 pages of an intervention.
I'm better. I'm better now.
But he was a great conversational piece. So. I hope you support it, and you know, if you can't afford the magazine available, you know, I'll make at least that interview available, and you can put it on his website or Facebook page. But because you know, I'm not here to, you know, kind of promote. I'm here today to talk mostly about commitment, and it's a great commitment for me to do a magazine that's printed and published. it's a great commitment for me to do distribution. It goes around the world. I'm really surprised when I started it. I thought there'd be a good following, but there is a massive following overseas more than in America. It's not, trust me, it's not bombing in America, but I thought, hey, America would do well, and then trickle effect, you know, Ireland, Japan, you know, things like that. I was just in the UK working with a distributor, and it's selling like hotcakes, and what bothers me is the shipping. And of course, we have the supply and demand chain issues, we have the port issues, items like that. I would hate to be, I'm a police officer and private investigator. I would hate to be a port authority person right now, doing, you know, tariffs and bill of ladings and, you know, people coming in and out of the country. That's a tough job right there, technically, you know, all the border patrols. So I definitely have a point on that one. But the magazine's doing really, really well, and I have some people that want to hear about Marie's group right over there. I have some people in Hollywood that want to talk with me, RPG and Stacy. Sorry, Stacy, you know, couldn't be here today. But
Thomas, sorry, you got to talk a lot louder.
oh, okay, okay, okay. So trust me, I like to talk. I like to hear myself talk. So I'm talking about commitment. And I want to put the magazine aside. The commitment of the people here today. You know, I applaud you, but I have a microphone. I applaud you, and I applaud the people here because, you know, it's tough to walk forward and talk with somebody about this industry. Even if it's just, you know, paranormal in general, you know, it's Bigfoot, UFO, ghosts, what have you. There's a lot of people that just kind of give you a dirty look. And one of my first things that I ever ran into was a ghost story. Boston PD, my first year rookie, and an older woman comes into the station, the precinct, and talks with a couple of people on intake and one of the assistant captains, and I was like, well, why don't you go over and see Thomas? So I take her information. She has a missing niece, and I decided to go and look into it. Little did I know what I was getting into on that part. I went, the long story very short, it'll probably be one of the issues. I went and I found her. She was in a warehouse, second floor, that used to be like a discotheque, like a Studio 54, that had a fire. And I saw her there, and I went in, I couldn't find her. I had a partner with me. I said, you know, you go to back way, I'm gonna go to front. We couldn't find her. I come back down, I see her again, my partner doesn't. I go back to the police station and report everything because, you know, I have to do reports. We're buried in reports all the time. And everyone was laughing at me. And I'm like, you know, why are you guys laughing? And they go, oh, you just did the Cassie case. And I'm like, what's the Cassie case? Her name was Cassie. This woman comes in all the time, an elderly woman, looking for her niece. She wants to know where her niece is. And I found her niece. But her niece has been deceased for a number of years. And they were just sending me out just to, because it was a rookie hazing thing. It was a hazing. I mean, I'm just over 18. Just over 18, they send me out there. And so then I go back to the grandmother, in a sense, and report that I saw her. And she's like, perfect, I wanted to know where she was. I guess she's there, but sometimes she moves. And she just wants to, every couple of years, know where she's at or have affirmation that she is still around. And so that was my first paranormal case. You know, I've lived, we had a farm in Kentucky, which I had summers there. And I would always find Bigfoot tracks. I would not have any sightings, I wouldn't have any sense, you know, the smell. They used to always say that, you know, Florida skunk ape, but, you know, Bigfoot, unkempt in Kentucky it has a scent, it's a smell. But I always would find tracks. Of course, it was by a very, very good game trail. And so, I mean, I was really interested in the paranormal, especially with some of the people here will remember, you know, 1977-ish, Leonard Nimoy, In Search Of, great personality, great voice, great great, credibility. He didn't just sign on to any project. He took projects that he thought was very interesting. That's why he's never done like a game show host or a night,
Spooky side. So I know everybody here today is a Bigfoot expert, right? So I'm not going to step on their toes too much because I'm going to talk about some other monsters. And I'm going to first start off with a local boy. Now, 1932, because of the way the world is, we had a wonderful hurricane come right past this area. It was called the Florida-Alabama hurricane. It was before we named them here in Florida. Florida loves to name things. That's the one thing we've all learned doing this, is that Florida loves to rename everything. Well, this is back, the Florida-Alabama hurricane comes by, and it goes right past here, right through Port Charlotte Harbor, and it sucks all the water out of the bay. Now, we saw this in Hurricane Irma a few years ago, Tampa Bay, where all the water got sucked out. And what happened was, 1932, there's this story of this family. They're going through the Depression. Life is terrible out here. The water gets sucked out of the bay, and suddenly there's fish and crabs and everything out there. So everybody rushes out to grab as much food as they can to feed their families for as long as they can. And they start grabbing it all. And this one family out there, they see a pirate chest. And they're like, oh, gold. Yeah, this is great, but it's way out there. So they're like, all right, let's do it. Let's go. So they run out there. Now, as we learned with Hurricane Irma, the water comes back pretty quick. So they're out there trying to get into this chest, and they cannot get into it. And they're trying everything they can. And the story goes that the family breaks into it, and it's full of cannonballs.
Oh, gosh.
Cool thing, but not going to save your family in the Depression in the 1930s. And now the water is coming back. And they don't know what to do. And they see this little mound with a tree growing on it. And they're like, well, that's going to be safe land. Let's head over to that. And they get over on it. And then the water comes back. And they're realizing they're a mile from shore. And then it starts rising and floating. And they're like, oh no, we're on an upside down boat. Or something like that, and we're going to get washed out to sea. This is terrible. What are we going to do? And suddenly, it changes course and starts going against the current and comes back towards Punta Gorda. And they don't know what's going on. And the little girl who's sitting on the front looks down and sees a head and sees flippers. It's a giant turtle. What? They're on a giant turtle. Family of 4 on a giant turtle. And they make it back to shore. Now, they thank the turtle for saving them. They go immediately into town to tell everybody about this amazing thing that happened, and no one believes them. It's a freaking giant turtle. Who's going to believe you, right? Well, 30 years pass. It passes into legend. It's one of those Florida folklore stories. That's why most of you who are from this area probably don't even know this story. But 1965, Port Charlotte Harbor, the Navy is on high alert because Cuban Missile Crisis wasn't that long ago. Everything's still everybody just stays on alert. We're all ready for the next who knows what's going to hit. And while they're out there cleaning, a guy sees a dark shape go by. A large dark shape. Now he's used to hammerheads, he's used to some other things, a Navy diver, and he suddenly looks a little closer as like, it's a sub. Oh God, it's a sub coming. So he puts everyone on red alert, and they scramble everything they can. They get out there, and what they see is a 30-foot diameter loggerhead turtle. Same spot 30 years later. A little bit bigger. Didn't fit the original story because the original story was a snapping turtle or maybe even a box turtle. But same place, 30 years later, verification. Wow. So that old family that everybody laughed at, told stories, could easily have been real. So So that's what we look into, is we look into these things, and that's why we're big on report. Go to the BFRO, go to Mid-Florida, Bigfoot hunters, go to Independent Sasquatch Research Team. When you see something, say something. It's the same principle, because your story from 30 years ago might be verified by something just a few years later, or a month later, a week later. And that's, so my wonderful wife back there, the talented illustrator, Carrie Schultz, she drew our Punta Gorda turtle. Oh, wow. And based on the original legend. And sure enough, a minor little difference in tail, with a loggerhead turtle, which is a little different, but it fits, right? So, and that's just it. If you hadn't ever heard that original story, the second story, the Navy story, doesn't make sense either. But when the two together, suddenly it all makes sense. And suddenly it's like, okay, we're not out here in the woods just looking for nothing. There's a reason. Now,
frozen type of thing. And they all look like the Patterson film. And they're all these happy, frumpy Bigfoot, frolicking woods with woodland creatures. And I'm like, no, I'm going to go the far other extreme. I'm going to draw Bigfoot the way I think they look like. Because a lot of people, when they see Bigfoot, they're not all happy. Some people get these traumatized PTSD type syndromes. They have nightmares. Some avid hunters and hikers never go in the woods again. Some people move away from the houses. And they describe them, the 5-foot shoulders and the big chest and everything. So that's how I draw them. I draw them with big shoulders, a big chest, and 6-pack abs and bunch of steel. And I just kind of draw them more graphically. Like, for example, if you looked through your window and saw that, they'd be like, well, I'm sorry, baby, we gotta move. But the other thing about my book is the strangest thing about Bigfoot is that they don't all look the same. They don't look like patterns, they don't look like Harry and Hendersons. Some look ape-like, some look like hybrids, kind of like half man, half ape, like a Neanderthal. And some look almost human. And I've heard stories where a hunter will see this 8-foot hairy creature and they're going to shoot it and they look through the scope and they can't pull the trigger because it looks too human. I haven't heard some people say they've seen both male and female Bigfoot that look attractive. I'm like, all right. So anyway, so my book, I try to have the whole spectrum of different appearances of Bigfoot. But the main thing about my book, it's technically a colored book. But I call it the famous Bigfoot and Yeti encounters because I try to illustrate all the different type of famous myths and legends and famous Bigfoot stories. And I have a 2-page glossary that tells all the different characters in every page, brief description and dates and all that. So let's look at a couple of them. This is my lovely assistant, Rosanna.
I'm his wish version of Vanna White.
Yeah, she's my Vanna White for the next 15 minutes. But another thing about Bigfoot, they're seen all around the world, every continent in the world. They have them dating back to when man first recorded history. Like Vikings saw them. But a lot of times in the 1800s, there's stories. This is one of my favorites. This is my depiction of Ape Canyon. But also my book, a lot of people don't know Daniel Boone claimed that he shot and killed a 10-foot hairy bipedal creature that was attacking his son. So I got that in my book. And let's look at some other ones. Now, of course, I got the famous stories. This is Patty from the Patterson film. You can't have a Bigfoot book without Patty. But as you can see, I try to have all the muscle structures and try to make it look a little bit more realistic. And then, one of my favorites, The Legend of Boggy Creek. Again, it's all muscular and scary. Because on my book, it's appropriate for children, but it's not really meant for it. It's really more a collector's item for adults. I even put my book, ages 8 to 80, may be too scary for small children because I just don't want a bunch of mothers writing on Amazon saying, this book scared my children. So, a little more graphic, a little more awesome. And then here's my depiction of the Florida Skunk Ape.
Yeah.
Rustling an alligator. I'm giving away free copies of this one in my book. So, with some of the creatures you can see are the Gigantopithecus, the prehistoric 10-foot bipedal creature. That's Ape Canyon there, the Tennessee Wild Man, the Blue Man of the Ozarks, Zeta, the Russian Yeti, Jocko the Ape Boy, the Minnesota Iceman, the Patterson creature, Momo, the Missouri Monster, the Russian Buffalo, the Pass Attack, in Florida Skunk Ape.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of lucky. I just started this a few months ago, but the Bigfoot community is pretty small, and I got a lot of big cryptozoologists that advise me on this, like Lauren Coleman and Lynn Blackburn and Ken Gerhardt. So I got a lot of advice about this, and I got my book already. Cliff Rockman of Finding Bigfoot, he has his at his museum in Oregon, the North American Bigfoot Center. David Shealy, who's here, he's got my book in his Skunk Ape Research headquarters. And I also have it in the Chute Ranch Museum in Oklahoma. And also Lauren Coleman has it in his International Cryptozoology book, or museum rather. So that's pretty much what I got here. So please come by my booth. I have some other artwork. I have some free artwork from this. I have my Bigfoot playing poker. That's a fun one. And also I used to be a character artist, so I got some characters of some baby Bigfoot. So I just tried to, the whole thing is funny about Bigfoot. It was frustrating when I read encounters. They talk about what the forest looked like and what they're wearing, what they had for breakfast. But when it comes to Bigfoot, they say, it was big, hairy, it smelled bad. And I'm like, that's how you got, honestly, what's their face look like and everything. So I just try to explore what they really look like, in my opinion, based on research. Okay, Ryan, I think I'm going to schedule for 15.
The Charlotte County fire engine. Very cool. It's named the Skunk Ape.
Skunk Ape.
And we're about to give them an award. I'm super excited. Bigfoot is real, guys!
Ready? These are the faces of men that believe in Bigfoot.
Skunk Ape lives. Perfect.
Presenting to these gentlemen, it says presented to the Charlotte County Fire and EMS Station 8, our honorary member of the Southwest Florida Skunk Ape Conference 64222. And that will be obviously presented by Miss Intergalactic 2022.
These jerseys, t-shirts, hats, the ugly Sasquatch doll. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank
For the swag.
For the city of Charlottesville, which is not what it used to be. It's very liberal today. But anyway, I was raised in that general area over near Gordonsville, which is our family farm was about 5 miles from Gordonsville, which is northeast of Charlottesville on Route 231. There's a mountain range that runs just to the east of Charlottesville called the Southwest Range. It's the first mountain range that comes off the eastern seaboard. And Monticello is down at Charlottesville, and on the north end is Madison's home, near Orange, the town of Orange. And so my dad knew a couple of families that had farms at the base of the Southwest Range, and the Gardner family had one that actually had a pasture that faced up on the face of the east range side of the range there. It was probably about 40 acres. And so Dad said, we're going to go squirrel hunting. So my cousins had a really good squirrel dog. So we went in our 1947 Jeep to the Gardner Farm and Strawberry Hill Farm and went up on the side of the mountain to this pasture, on the very north side of the pasture. And so we pulled up and everybody got up, put the two dogs out, my dog and my cousin's dog. And so I decided, they're standing offside the fence, well, I'm going to get on the other side of the fence in the woods. So I stepped over into the woods and I walked back probably far from here to probably say, the kitchen back there. And I found a stump, I mean, a very good sized stump, so I sat down on it. And so I'm sitting on the stump looking at the fence and watching the dogs run up and down the tree line. There's a bunch of hickory trees on the tree line and some acorns and stuff from oak trees there. And I mean, this place had been cut over years ago. And for some reason, I looked off my right shoulder like this, and I see a face which looked probably the size of a thumbnail off in the distance in this greenery looking at me. This brown face looking at me. And I'm sitting there looking at it, and I probably looked at it for probably 3 to 5 seconds trying to figure out what I'm seeing. And I look at it and I hear some scuffling going over at the fence line where Dad and everybody was. And so I turned back and looked at them, and they were scaring about, and they're talking. And I look back at that same shoulder, looking hard, and I don't see him. It's gone. I don't see the face. And so right after that, Dad said, "We got to go. The dogs are into the skunk scent's out. We got to go." And Dad was in a hurry. We got to go. So I go back and I climb over the fence. I never told my father what I'd seen. I did not tell my cousins until about 10 years ago. And one of the cousins has already passed, but I didn't pass it on to them at all. And I just never said anything because I was seeing things. And then when we started seeing the Abominable Snowman, and I think Sports Afield magazine, I go, there must be something to these creatures, and I never put the two together though. And then suddenly the skunk ape thing came up, and the Sasquatch, and we in Florida have a term called skunk monkey, which I'm gonna relate to it a little bit. But anyway, I just never said anything to my dad. And I finally told my sisters about it. I have 3 sisters younger than I finally told them about it. One sister follows us quite closely. She really does. And so she was into our visit up in Lakeland, matter of fact, quite a bit. And my son is into the fellow from Maine, I can't remember his name. This guy's good. This guy, Lauren's great. He really is. But anyway, that was my experience, and that was about 11 east in the county here. Big Dave, and he just passed 3 weeks ago. Maybe probably about 20 days ago. God bless his soul. Anyway, I'm driving down the road. Debbie's with me. She went home to take care of the dog. But anyway, I'm driving down the road, and he says, "Are you out here?" Meaning I'm out in east in the county near his place. And I said, "No, I'm coming back from Lakeland." He said, "What are you doing up there?" I said, I'm hesitant. Hesitant as most of us may be. I said, "Well, we went to a skunk ape conference." "Oh, you believe in skunk monkeys?" And I go, when he came back with that comment, I knew right away I got somebody to listen to me. And I said, how are you familiar with it? He says, "My uncle was thrown by one."
What?
Yes, thrown by one. And I'm still, my wife's listening to this on the phone as we're driving, going through Polk County, matter of fact, at the time. And I said, "What happened?" He says, "Down south of Florida Keys, going into the first town into the Keys, I forget the name of it, Coral something or whatever." He says he was down there and he came into one, and it was a close encounter, and the thing literally picked him up. Threw him.
How far?
I don't know. I didn't get into the story. Dave would be here today if he were alive, and that would be a story that would really be good for Florida. But anyway, God rest Dave's soul. This is my 1, 2. We had another one here in Fort Charlotte a while back. And then this second one is the conference, and this is the 4th I've been to. I went to one in 1977 at Barry University, at Barry College, I think, at the time. And my first wife and I went. And I'd heard about this guy from California who had experienced this skunk apes and all. And so well, Sasquatch, that's what they call him out there. And so we went. It was on a Friday afternoon, and they had a huge auditorium, and it was, I'd say, a third filled up, which I thought was a pretty good attendance. Of course, Miami. And the guy made his presentation, and then they allowed this to happen, a town hall type thing. And a guy came up and actually spoke. He had hired the Miccosukee Indian tribe guide to take him up one of the dikes and one of the canals to go fishing. And so the guy took a cooler and his dog, and so he went up the canal, and he dropped him off. "I'll come back and get you late in the afternoon." So the guy went on back, so he fished and had a good time. And he got tired, and so I'm imagining, the dikes are domed like this, and usually they have a road on the top. And so anyway, so he was tired and waited for the guy to come back. So he just fell down on the side of the bank, facing it in some direction. And his cooler and everything with him, and his dog put his head across his legs looking down the dike. And so he went to sleep. And he heard the dog make a good old sound, like a growl. And it woke him up, and he looked down his chest, and the dog has raised his head up and was looking down the dike. And so he raised up on his elbows and looked down the dike and going up the dike side to the top was a skunk ape. Actually coming up, so he raised up, and it saw him when he raised up, and so he stood up, and it went down the side, on the other side, and went into the sawgrass, and he said you could see it parting the grass as you go out, as it was walking out into the waters and the grass. But I want to relay those two stories, because I thought they would add to the event as well.
I don't know if anybody's ever heard about the Jersey Devil.
Oh yeah.
Well, I knew nothing about his Bigfoot. And me and a friend decided we were going to go out into the Pine Barrens and find the Jersey Devil in Mama Reed's home. So we're walking 10 miles back into the Pine Barrens on the railroad tracks. So I get this feeling to turn around. So I turned around, and in the middle of the track was standing this thing. It was about 7.5 foot tall, and it was just looking at us. So I said to the girl with me, Dolores, turn around and tell me what you see. And she lets out a scream and goes, oh my God, what is that? And I said, Dolores, I think we just found the Jersey Devil. Because it had reddish brown hair, and we were close enough that we could tell what sex it was. That's how close we were. And then she goes, oh my God, she says, that's between us and the car. And so I says, okay, well what we'll do, we'll turn around, we'll just walk back towards it and see what happens. She goes, like hell we are. She goes, you may, but I'm walking way behind you. So we're walking towards the car, and it just kind of just moves its hands this way and looking at us. And there was no sense of anger or fear or aggression. And we're getting closer, and it moves over to the other side of the railroad track. And it's just standing there looking at us. And I think it was just as curious of us as we were, a bit. And so we're getting really close now. And it just took, and it just leaped clear over the other side of the railroad tracks into the tree line. And that's the last we saw. And there was absolutely no odor, no sense of aggression. And I personally think it was a juvenile because of the height. It wasn't quite 8 foot or 9 foot.
And you had a camera around your neck?
Oh, yeah. I had a 35 millimeter camera hanging around my neck and did not take a picture. And I thought, oh, how stupid, right? But I really think that they can communicate telepathically. Yes. And if they want their picture taken, they're going to let it. But if they don't, you're just not going to think of it. So that's my story.
Thank you. I write for Paranormality magazine. You can check our booth out in the corner over there. And I have a different approach to a lot of the paranormal. I'm not a strict Bigfoot guy or a ghost guy or a UFO guy. I try to cover a little bit of all. And I it's been a journey. I had a experience as a child. Ooh, there we go. I think a lot of people have had personal experiences. Raise your hand if you've had a paranormal experience. Yeah, right, most people. So when it comes to the paranormal, there are some trends that pop up between Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, and aliens. And through some research and some in-depth work with scientists and some less than scientific people, I have been working on the comparisons of those experiences to those on psychedelics, psychedelic drugs, and meditative states. And in my book, so everyone, let's get a quick right, if you want a little more paranormal, all right. So I wrote a list that compares these paranormal experiences and what I call the psychedelic theory. So these are some factors, some trends in Bigfoot, ghosts, aliens, and the trends that shamans experience in a tiki hut, taking a substance, a sludge, or a mushroom. So the first one I have on this list is impossible physics. And this is kind of something we know with a lot of UFOs, right? But Bigfoot as well. We've heard stories today of Bigfoots disappearing, turning into balls of light. We all know UFO videos where they're going impossibly fast, they stop and turn on a dime. These videos that baffle scientists. For those who have experienced the psychedelic experience, you'll see that on everything. You'll take a substance and see dancing lights. You'll see impossible physics. You'll see different worlds, which is another one of these factors. Something that happens with UFO encounters, right? People are taken aboard a craft and they see, purple trees on an impossible landscape, which is something you might experience in an altered state. One of the other most strangest, creepiest factors is missing time. So missing time is something that's reported in all of these encounters, often with UFOs, but when it comes to poltergeists and ghosts as well, I've heard a story from a friend of mine. They were using a Ouija board, right? And they thought it was for a couple hours maybe. They went downstairs and the whole night had passed. It had been 12 hours. They were baffled by this. Well, that's something that's also happened to me when I've taken, for legal reasons, I'm going to say accidentally taken, some mushrooms. I've had that same experience. I've been staring at the wall and I was like, wow, that's cool. About maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes had passed. 4 hours, gone in an instant. And you have the opposite effects. You hear under some other substances, salvia, DMT, you have these experiences that last for days and days and days, but it's only been 15 minutes. We experienced that in a case I wrote about in this book with Corporal Valdez in Chile. He was with a group of his soldiers. This was witnessed by a group of more than 10 people. The corporal, during a training mission, walked off at night towards this light that had come down. The light vanished, and so did the corporal. 15 minutes later, the light reappears, and so does the corporal, and he is terrified. He's screaming, he can't remember his name, he can't figure out where he is. But the strangest thing is, the cleanly shaven corporal had come back with a beard, and his watch was spun forward a week. And this was investigated by the Chilean military. They had local professors come in and interview all these soldiers, and they all corroborated this story, terrified and amazed. And again, this mirrors those experiences of people in shamanic traditions. Next, we have the personality changes. So, we pulled the room earlier about people who had a paranormal experience. Raise your hand if your paranormal experience was good, was a positive one. You got some? Now raise your hand if you've had a negative, terrifying paranormal experience. We've got a couple here. So, these tend to be the two reactions people have when they take psychedelic drugs. You have the, well, we're all one, love and light and peace and happiness. Or you have the opposite, where this is terrifying, I hate this, I don't want to be a part of this, I don't want this to happen again. And we see that from people encountering Bigfoot, right? Some people see him and they see a spirit of nature. They feel connected to the woods and to Mother Nature, and they have this unity, which is synonymous with psychedelic experiences. And then, of course, you have the flip side, where people see something and it terrifies them. Unnaturally so, right? It feels to your core, you're uncomfortable and unnerved. So this was one of those, again, one of these parallels. And then the final parallel I wrote about is something I think familiar to a lot of people, and that's high strangeness. And this is something that's throughout the paranormal, and a lot of new researchers are focusing more on specifically high strangeness. And this is something that you'll hear a lot if you talk to people who use a lot of psychedelic drugs. There's a lot of, man, this one time I was taking this substance and a hummingbird landed right on my finger and we stared at each other for 6 hours. Right? It happens. But those kind of super bizarre occurrences also happen with the paranormal. RPG might tell you a story later where the animals around the Crowley house where he was experimenting, they all reacted in this high strangeness form and began circling the house in this strange device they were using. Again, something unexplainable, this high strangeness. One of my favorite examples of high strangeness comes from Jacques Vallée, noted UFO researcher. He took a cab out to this mountain once with a couple of locals who had sighted a UFO landing. So they drive for a few hours, and then they go and they hike for a few more hours up this mountain, and they get to this clearing. Scorched trees, burn marks, impressions on the ground, a classic UFO landing site. But smack dab in the middle is a plate of steaming pancakes, butter half melted on the middle. Miles and miles and miles from any diner, any location, any even home. In the middle of nowhere, this freshly cooked stack of pancakes, just for them to see and to arrive to. And that kind of encapsulates the essence of the paranormal. You have a lot of people who will say, oh, well, Bigfoot is a demon, you gotta throw him out, stay away from that. And you have the other side, again, Bigfoot is an angel and he's here to help us. But the truth is, Bigfoot, like the rest of them, he's a stinker. He's messing with us. We don't know why, we don't know exactly his motives, but we know he's tricky, right? Everyone knows that about Bigfoot in particular. That's why he's one of my favorite subsects of the paranormal, because you can't talk about Bigfoot without talking about some crazy high strangeness. And so this is I got the new approach to paranormal research and phenomena. And it's something that a lot more people are taking seriously. And, you know, in this field, we hear a lot about Native American traditions and things like that. And the truth is, there was a science behind these meditative states and taking these substances and interacting with these entities, if you want to call them that. And we've lost that science. So what we can do is retroactively work with it. We can connect these communities that, you know, used to be Bigfoot, used to be ghosts, used to be psychedelic drugs, and we can pool our research together and as a team come up with these greater answers. So thank you for having me come up here and go on a little rant. Appreciate you guys. Check out the book. It's Paranormal Expeditions, Hunt for Friendship. And you can find me over in the back corner at the Paranormality magazine booth. Thank you guys. Have a good one.
2 years ago, when I first started doing this, I didn't know that by myself doing things. And I have an area, it's part of Wesley Chapel that I grew up in. And
Speak into the phone.
Always had unique things go on. So I went back there by myself. You have to ride your bicycle 1.5 miles back into the woods, and then get off the bike and walk another 0.5 mile back into the woods, farther, even deeper. So I'm about 2 miles from anybody. Nobody's even nowhere near where I'm at. And I went down the trail that my brain told me don't go down. And I went down it anyway. And then I found a tree that was pushed across the trail, and the brain said, don't go over that tree. Something's telling you not to go there. But I did it. When I took the step over the tree, I heard a tree to my right. Have you ever heard a tree break? Like an actual 4 or 5 inch big around tree break? It's loud, especially when there's no wind, no nothing, and it cracked. And I heard it fall into the palmettos. It makes a sound. Crunch into the palmettos, you know the sound. So I stopped. I'm trying to look to see what the heck it was. I almost didn't want to look. I'm like, oh my God, this is actually real. So I stood up, and I'm kind of like, I'm going to leave now. And I remember I heard another noise. And then the growl came. It was the deepest, darkest, like a 2,000-pound alligator mating growl. It was the best way I guess to describe it. After the growl, I yelled at it. And I said, I'm leaving, I get it. I'm sorry, I'm leaving, I'm out of your area. And I started walking out the road, and I had to come out the trail. Now I got to go a half a mile back to my bike. And I brought something I think I pissed off. And I started walking left once I got out the trail, and I could hear it. It's following me 30, 40 yards away. Every time I step, it stops. Every time I stop, it stops. Like, you gotta be kidding me. This thing is literally following me. I'm not coming out of here alive. I did. But it, I heard something which sounded like hitting trees. And it was sticks. One landed behind me, and then one landed in front of me. So that's two. Couldn't be a coincidence. So now it's walking with me, it's throwing stuff at me. I get all the way back to my bike, and about the time I get to my bike, I just see a brown, darkish image go past. So, oh my God, it's going ahead of me. It's gonna cut me off. I'm not coming out. But I got back to my bike, got out to my trail, probably the fastest I've ever pedaled a bike in my life. Got back to the front gate, and I had the worst headache I've ever had in my life, and I had it for 3 days. And it wasn't until after I met Tim. Tim said, I think you got hit with infrasound. Yeah. Because my ears even felt swollen. Yeah. But it was about 3 days. Since that happened, now when I go out into the woods, if I'm in their area or around where they're at, my ears get pressure on them. It's like it's into my ears now. It's weird. I feel their pressure. But that's one of my first stories that I ever had.
Thank you, Mike. Going towards Englewood on River Road. We go out there sometimes on different trails looking around. We've had Marie and a bunch of the other mid-Florida Bigfoot people come down and meet us there, and we went out and found some structures out there. But one time I was out there on my own, not back where we were, on the other side, up closer to the Boy Scouts camp area. And I'm walking back through there, and I'm intentionally, looking for evidence. And I'm cutting off through some little side parts that just happened to be open up, and I was exploring this one area that was a little bit swampy off to the left, and I went, it went out for a second. I went to come back out on the trail and walk forward, and then off to my left where I had just been, I heard a deep growl sound that was pretty loud. And I instantly was terrified and literally walked out slowly backwards about half mile all the way back up to the main trail. And that's about it. That's awesome.
Before I used to be a character artist at Busch Gardens, and at Busch Gardens, one cardinal rule is never be rude to a guest. I mean, the worst thing is someone go to guest relations and complain about you. But anyway, Market Park, we've been talking about, they have a lot of skunk ape sightings, but they also have tons of alligators. They're supposed to have over 100, maybe 200 big alligators. They have this airboat tour to see alligators. So I went out there with my brother, and we see big 10-foot alligators out there. They had a very good tour guide. Tell us everything about alligators. So he goes, hey, does anyone have any questions? And I'm like, yeah, you know anything about skunk ape? And this guy turned around me, red in the face. He said, all those stories have been disproven. Like really upset. And then he went back to talk to alligators. And I've always heard that park rangers and stuff, they're not supposed to talk about it. And my brother said, I think he overreacted a little bit. So I don't know, I just kind of wondered if, he was afraid of losing his job or anything. So I thought that was weird. Anyway, that's all I got.
Here in Florida, not y'all, but people didn't hear about it. The news, I always thought the news spread like you throw a rock in the water and the rings go out, and that's kind of how the news worked. But with the skunk ape, it was the other way around. People in Japan, people in South America, people in Australia knew more about the skunk ape than people living in Florida. So it was kind of weird. It was like an implosion instead of an explosion. And when that happened, I said, something weird's going on here. And it definitely was, it was getting people's attention on the other side of the world. The majority of news broadcasts were broadcast in Europe, Australia. Film crews came from around the world, but none came from around here. And so that was unusual. And we're going to talk about unusual things. That's one of the things that was unusual. In 2000, I went out to an area where I had my sighting when I was a kid back in 1973, and I just got extremely lucky. It was like winning the lottery. I was walking along and I heard something splashing in the water, and I looked up, and about a quarter mile away I saw a deer flush, and it ran down a row of trees and out across the field, and it was making a lot of noise, and I didn't hear it anymore, but there was more coming from where it had come from. So I held my ground and stood there, and here came a skunk ape. It came out, walked down the tree line, and crossed the field in about the same area where the deer did. And it's a natural bridging area, so if anybody's had the opportunity to see that video, you can't tell in the video, but the water there is about 1.5 to 2 foot deep. So, and this thing was moving as fast as a deer at one point. And so it's indisputable. Nobody's ever went to that location. There's never been any investigations done, although I've been very willing. It's just kind of a video that stayed hidden. One of the things that I want to touch base on is filming in a national park. I get asked to do a lot of stuff and television shows, but you really can't film a television show in a national park. I mean, we're not going to see Naked and Afraid in the Everglades. The government's just not going to go for that, and they're not going to go for anything else either unless they're involved. So it's difficult. It requires permitting. You have to know your exact pinpoint location 30 to 90 days in advance, depending on who's in the permitting office. And that's impossible to do when you're actively tracking wild animals. So when you're watching the television and you see these people hunting, it's generally on private land, maybe in some cases some state land that's not very restricted. And so that's been a big thing for me, and it's the reason that my video hasn't actually been looked into, because there's no film crew, no company has ever wanted to go the extra mile to get the permitting and pay the money that it takes to film inside of a national park. And it's been an interesting life. My family moved to the Everglades in 1890. And we moved there to build a school in the 10,000 Islands, and we arrived by sailboat, and we came not that far, because before that we were in Fruitville, Florida. So I guess I'm a Florida native, several generations. The property, the research headquarters is located within the boundaries of a national park. Private property within the boundaries of a national park are pretty much unheard of, but we've been there long enough, and it was a battle just hanging on to the land. And I can remember, just being able to pay the taxes, pay the light bill, and do my research, and that's what I did. And you notice I didn't mention food or cars or health insurance or any of the things that we pay. So I definitely have sacrificed my entire life, and it's really nice to see all of y'all here, and it gives me a feeling that maybe it's paid off, and it's paid off to me on an individual basis, one-on-one, with one person, one at a time. And one of the people that really made a difference in my life and made me realize that I had a purpose was Jerry Mayer. And he was a young man who came out to the Everglades to look around. He was curious, and he passed away recently, and it just reminded me how short life is, and how, we impact people when we meet them, and people impact us. And so there's, unfortunately, people pass away. And I retired last year simply because of that. A lot of people that, watch the shows, or even people that are actively in the field. The Everglades is tough, let me tell you. There's the mangrove forest, there's the transition zone of grass prairies, there's the cypress swamps, there's the pine flats, and each one of those gives us a different degree of danger. And I'm not afraid of snakes or gators or panthers or skunk apes, but eventually, I've had so many close calls, so many near-death experiences where I went to sit down and noticed a rattlesnake, or I was walking down a watery trail and tripped over an alligator, or turned around and noticed that maybe a bull shark was coming up behind me, fixing to get me in the ankle, and there's no recovery. I spent 4 days on an Indian mound about 15 years ago. I stepped on a stingray, and I couldn't walk, and I spent 4 days there before I finally said, you know, I'm either going to die or I'm going to move. And so I've got grandkids and I've got children, and I was just concerned that if something happened to me, I would never be found, and I thought my family deserved better than that.
1873, the Ocese Pond Swamp. Ocese Pond Swamp is in the Panhandle of Florida. 1873, this wild man was harassing women and children in the swamp village. It got so bad that Native American gatherers and Civil War veterans teamed up together and surrounded this creature in the Devil's Half Acre. They netted the creature, and then they actually captured it and sent it to the capital, to Tallahassee. And the governor said, oh, no way, not here. Send it to Chattahoochee Hospital. And Chattahoochee, if you guys are film nerds, Gary Oldman made a movie called Chattahoochee, that he was a PTSD survivor, and he went to the asylum, and they treated him like a criminal and did testing on him. So if they did that to war veterans, then imagine what they did to the swamp thing. But the story is they kept him there for 3 years, and then he sadly passed away, and they buried him with a bunch of Native Americans, and then they put a building on top of him. It would be really nice if we can get some kind of scanning or some kind of radar, but I know that it's really far-fetched. But I've talked to many people that still live in Ocese Pond, and the descendants are still lurking today. I talked to this one guy, he's an old radio guy that made his own earpiece because he's losing his hearing, and he can tune it to listen to like different tones and can hear them breathing, and has recorded their deep gurgling and can tell when they have phlegm in their lungs. It's really exciting. But there's also been other stories of a kid that was kidnapped there and actually escaped a Sasquatch, a giant skeleton that was found up in the trees, and then a race of wolf children, so the actual people that have hair on their face. But the Ocese Pond Wildman story was on the front page of the New York Times, and Expedition Bigfoot, Finding Bigfoot, Bigfoot Chronicles, any Bigfoot establishment has never even sniffed it, and I think there's something to that because they had this thing captured for 3 years and they were doing testing on it. They had a file on it. So again, the Ocese Pond Wildman, captured in 1873 in the Panhandle of Florida, and the descendants are still lurking today. But what a really cool thing is my best friend in the Panhandle, Jack McClellan, the director of the movies that I've been making. He helped make Zillafoot, which Zillafoot, wow, so bad it's good. But I'm very proud of it because it's in Walmart, so you can find it on Walmart. But Jack McClellan, what was a blessing meeting him. He's a director from FSU. He's an FSU film student. So we get me, who's balls to the wall in the swamp, and then you got the guy who's carrying $8,000 worth of gear trying to keep up with me. So it's a really beautiful thing. But he's a tech whiz. He is the head IT guy of Chattahoochee Hospital. And Chattahoochee Hospital, you can't get in there. That's a top-notch place. But since I'm his friend, I get to go visit him, and he lives on campus. So I have filmed the entrances into the deep underground military bases, the building that's supposedly on top of the grave. I have filmed that, And then some other people say that he's buried deep in the woods and there's an abandoned golf course. So we've walked the golf course and looked for him out there. So it's really cool, you know, being boots on the ground looking for Bigfoot graves when there's people saying we need to get a body, you know. And no, I do not advocate killing these creatures at all. They are human hybrids, you know, based on my data, and I have nothing for murderers. So, you know, we need to live in peace and connection and learn from these creatures. And a lot of people are, and their stories hopefully will, you know, rise up one day, but just eliminate the rhetoric that there's no Bigfoot proof, that we need a body. We need to just cut all that, you know, out. Like 2023 does not need to hear any of that. But yeah, man, the Occhese Pond is definitely a wild spot, and I have kayaked there. I've spent the night out there accidentally because in the early days we would just go balls to the wall and a little less planning, and sometimes those make the best chapters in my books, but some scary, scary nights. But being around in the Panhandle, I became good friends with Donnie Miller. He runs Standing Goats Rescue. This guy is one of the best guys. He doesn't hold me to nothing, but I hold myself to a higher standard just for knowing him. Like, I don't swear on podcasts no more. I don't smoke in front of him. I'm always on my best behavior. But his story is incredible. It's the Mariana Caveman. And of course, everywhere I go, I always research the haunted areas, and when I moved to somewhere, when I went to college, I always looked it up. So right when I moved to Mariana, I was looking up Mariana Bigfoot, and I came up Mariana Caveman, and it was a 12-foot tall Neanderthal creature found in a cave off of Highway 73, right by where my mom lives. So that story always stuck with me. And I went down in a cave that is really close to there, and I found a crazy footprint. It wasn't huge. It definitely wasn't no 12-footer. I think it was a juvenile or a female, but it was very narrow, and it was climbing uphill. So we got the toe scrapes and everything. It's very cool definition. I got it in a case at home. It didn't make the trip. But during the discovery, I have it on video, there was mass interference, and of course a lot of people know that these creatures have, you know, superpowers, but I think it's just the top of the animal kingdom. Infrasound, of course, big cats have infrasound. Echolocating, just like bats and dolphins. Even just like stomps, you know, like elephants, they can stomp on the ground and communicate for miles. So I think these tree knocks and tree breaks, they mean something, and there's definitely frequencies in it. And yes, you know, when us humans do it, they can tell the difference. You know, I see some comments, it's like, I like this documentary till you started knocking on trees. It's like, man, it's all trial and error, experimentation. I'll never knock anybody for trying anything, because we're going after these strange creatures there in the woods. They're very curious. We got to do something to raise their curiosity. And I feel like that's why us young guys, you know, me, Chaz, Matt Williamson in the back, we go out there with, you know, no expectations and no walls around us. And that just allows for things to happen. You have to mentally prepare days in advance. Manifestation. You have to let it happen. And I'm big on, if I go out with a group, you know, we'll do breathing exercises together, you know, just for 5 minutes, just so we're not, if there's 5 of us, we're not individually going into the swamp at that point. If we all could do some breathing and just connect at one point, we're a team. And maybe that would be intimidating to some Bigfoot, but I feel like it wouldn't be as chaotic, so they'd fully come in. And I feel like we have to really start focusing mentally before anything. Dave was talking about technology and all that, and it's definitely going to push the game further, but these creatures are always going to be one step ahead, so we have to meet them somewhere. And I think the mental aspect and the physical aspect are two different alleys that you have to simultaneously kind of go after. And I'm always trying to expand my mind and challenge myself. And when I go out there, just like Ryan was saying, you have to turn it off. All these theories and all this chaos that I'm spewing, I let that go when I'm out there, and I just let it happen to me. And it subtly tells me exactly.
I had the privilege of meeting and knowing publisher Charlie Carlton. He wrote the book Weird Florida. Anybody heard of that? Yep. He passed away about 4 years ago. And in fact, he was the one who told me I needed to write a book. He invited me to come speak at one of his little things that he was having over there near Daytona. And after the end, he said, you need to put that on paper. So I wrote the book. My first book, I didn't have a good publisher. And in fact, it turned more into a how to be a good parent book than it did looking for legends. And, you know, and my dad was the first one to point it out, like, I ain't gonna read this crap. I don't need you to tell me how to be a parent. I want to go look for Bigfoot, you know? You know, thank God I didn't publish too many of those books. In fact, they're probably collector's items now. I only had one printing made. Well, any of you folks watch the TV show Ancient Aliens?
Oh yeah.
You know the gentleman, David Hatcher Childress? Gray hair, glasses, goatee. He talks like this, which I'm glad David's not here to hear me say that, because he would get a little, Robert, I don't sound like that. Don't tell on me. He got a hold of me. No lie, folks. He called me up and introduced himself and stuff. He said, I got a hold of your book, but you missed the mark. You had a great idea, great source, you missed the mark. You ventured off and you lost your audience by trying to tell them how to be a parent. Let's redo your book. We're going to rename it a little bit and we're going to redo it. And every time you do a chapter, you send it to me and I'm gonna red pen it, as he used to say. And I always knew when he was gonna red pen my chapter, he'd call me up, hello Robert. I said, here it comes. I got your chapter. We're gonna need to redo it. But you know what? The finished product, I have to admit, I could die today and be a happy man in the book that came out. And I owe it all to him. Well, he came out, we did real good with it, sold pretty good overseas. And then he calls me up and says, you know, hello Robert. That's how he always calls. He said, what are you going to do for another book now? And I said, well, I hadn't given it much thought after, the first book, because I'm thinking, I really don't know. I didn't really give it much thought on how we were going to go with it. He goes, well, you think about it and you call me back later today. Today? So I went, sat down in my office and stuff with all my Bigfoot stuff all around me and stuff, and Mothman and all that. And I said, well, what's bigger than legend trip in the United States? The world. So I called him up. I said, how about international legend trip? He goes, good, start writing. So using my first book as a guide, I started going. And I'll tell you what, I had a hard time stop writing. It got to a point where he actually had to call me up and say, okay, that's enough. We need to stop the book you're writing so we can get the book published. Yeah, but I got one. No more. So it came out. It's actually a lot thicker, and believe it or not, it sold. Of all places, it has sold really well in Australia. Isn't that wild? Australia, of all places.
What's up, y'all? It's Connor, and I'm in Punta Gorda, talking about the Punta Gorda turtle. In 1932, there was a really bad hurricane here, and there was a storm surge that wiped out all the water from right here. Then, one family got stranded far out there when the water came back in rushing, and they took cover on a thing that they thought was an island. Sure enough, that island started swimming away. It was a giant turtle. Wow. Mark Muncy, Carrie Schultz, my favorite writer, my favorite illustrator. What's up, what's up? Chilling tales from the Panhandle to the Keys, baby. And the famous John Urban's table. What's up, John? Good speech. Vanna White, great job holding. Yeah. He's got one of these for free. Thank you, John. One for me.
You can take one of the poker ones too.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. That is awesome. I'm hoping to get that tattooed one day. Go all in. Magnets. There's John's famous coloring book. A lot of good encounters in there. Really cool. Stickers. Skunk Ape special. So many cool crystals, so much energy. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Oh, feeling the vibes from over here.
my job then.
Love it. The cool corner. Oh, look at that. Jack Kirby, Chaz, and the mom in charge. Yes, yes. Love it. Soon we gotta get me on the cover of this, guys.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The Morbid Muse. I could be that. The Muse. That's the real way to say it. I could be a muse. Hey, y'all. This is my corner, too. You guys know what Ekans backwards spells, right? Snake. Yep. You know where I'm going? You know what Arbok is? What about Muck? Yeah. I love Pokemon. Wow. Gone squatching. I love that. Some really cool carvings. A little big shot. Oh man. What's up, brother? Good to see you again since last time in Lakeland.
You too, man.
We always find ourselves where we need to be. I appreciate it. Oh, Saturn. You came a long way to be here on Earth. Sticker set. And thank you. I know you had a lot to do with putting this together. So I appreciate your hard work. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to next year. The Paranormal Press, Thomas Sinclair, Robert Robinson, and Marianne. I interviewed Robert last year. Really cool. Robert, good speech.
Connor.
Loved it.
I loved yours.
Thank you, man.
The energy, brother.
Hey,
The energy.
You're a reality star. I'm a D-list movie star. We got that energy, you know. Right here is where the Puckwoods came back for a resurgence. Haunted account.
Okay, so
Fort DeSoto, Mayaca.
Christopher Balzano, he is a lecturer himself.
Chris Balzano. Love to see it. Love to see it. The Skunk Ape barbecue sauce, man. You got the awesome truck out there with the Skunk Ape riding with you. Love to see it. Skunk Ape smoked jalapeno hot sauce. Go find it at the Skunk Ape headquarters. You can find it right there too. There's his phone number, guys. Very, very cool. I knew I've seen this before, and that's where it was. Was in down in the Everglades.
Yep.
Very cool, and you're spreading the word, just driving around, man.
One of my better accounts.
Yep.
Private label for a lot of people.
Really? Did you come up yesterday or this morning?
Last night.
Got you.
Yeah.
Through the hurricane at all?
Well, I had to go to Tampa. So.
It ain't a hurricane. There's nothing.
I travel, Chad. But 200 miles.
Yeah.
I go to Wisconsin back all the time.
Oh, wow. You ever see anything while you're driving?
If you ever see my cook trailer, I got alligator chasing a Sasquatch.
Wow.
I sell alligator meat, and he's going from Florida to Wisconsin.
I like that.
Chasing Sasquatch.
I like that.
Yeah.
Tells a story.
Yeah. I'm actually friends with Jack Links, and I got his guy that did the commercials coming out of the back of my cook trailer. Like he's stealing barbecue sauce. It's a great video.
That's madness, man. I'm gonna have to watch that. Take it easy, brother. Good seeing you. And Eve actually gave me a copy of this and signed it over for me after my speech. It's really cool. She liked that I stood up. L&N Designs, custom. Very cool. Going squatching.
And this is how I started.
Love it.
Vinyl with the glitter and all that. This is where it's going. This is the beautiful color.
That looks amazing.
Research about not only the legend, but the town itself. Why are these people telling this story? I always say, a ghost, we can debate whether or not a ghost is real or not real, but a ghost story is always true because people believe it and people tell it. So I gather as much information and then I go out and I try to experience the haunting the way the people in those communities tell the story. So the question becomes, why the heck, wait, the little kid's still here? Is that little kid still here? What? Close your eyes. Why the hell is a guy who looks for ghosts, and not even that, ghostly legends, here talking at a skunk ape convention? And the easiest answer is because I got a free vendor table if I came up here and talked. But the other reason is that through the research that I've done, starting first, like you said, with the Bridgewater Triangle, and now with the research I've done for my most recent book, the Ocala National Forest, it is impossible to get the full context of the complexity and the face of a community, and especially the weird things in a community, without looking at all of it. If you look at places like the Bridgewater Triangle, if you look at places like the Michigan Triangle, if you look at places like the Ocala National Forest, these places are experiencing UFOs, they're experiencing ghosts, they're experiencing zombies, and they're also experiencing Bigfoot, right? These things are all connected. So even if you don't believe in Bigfoot, right? And even if that's not your thing, you have to understand that in the context of the bigger picture. Why are these things all appearing in the same place? Does anyone have an answer to that? Good, exactly. Oh, my daughter says she knows. Go ahead. That's what I thought. So some of it, right? Some of it is misidentification. So when I talk to people about puckwudgies, have you guys ever heard of puckwudgies? Okay, so if you haven't, puckwudgies are these. He's a puckwudgie?
No, but told me about it. I live near the Bridgewater Triangle.
Where did you live near the Bridgewater Triangle? What town?
Abington.
Abington, one of the apexes. Yes. Excellent, beautiful. So puckwudgies are these 3-foot tall little troll creatures, right? And when I started researching them, I was researching Freetown, which is one of the other apexes. And people were coming up to me, knowing that I was working on this book because of my website, saying, what are these little creatures that are coming into my house at night? I saw them in the woods, and now all of a sudden they're appearing in my bedroom. What are they? And I'm like, I haven't the slightest idea. I've never heard of anything. Then I started doing a little bit of research. I found a book that led me to another book, that led me to another book, and all of a sudden, kind of the puckwudgie craze was born, right? But in doing that, I started to realize there's a paranormal element to them. It's impossible to get a picture of the Bridgewater Triangle without seeing puckwudgies as both a cryptid and an elemental and maybe something spiritual and maybe something undefined. So as we start to look at all of these different things and we start to define what is a puckwudgie versus what is a skunk ape versus what is a yeti, and are those just semantic debates, we have to think of like a lot of these things, it's just because we have a certain filter. Because all of a sudden all these people started coming up to me saying, hey, wait a minute, I for years thought I was a UFO abductee. Now I realize I was a puckwudgie victim. And I'm like, we don't have a support group the way the abductees do, so you're gonna have to deal with this on yourself. So I wanted to introduce another cryptid to you. And I think that this cryptid is it's one of those ones, like a puckwudgie, where it not only blurs the lines, but you're left scratching your head as to why, if it's not real, why did we invent it? And if it is real, how the hell do we avoid it? And that is, I'm going to show you the picture, because as you can see, my video skills were not that great. This is called a stakini. I'm going to pass this along so that you guys can see it. You get it last because you've already seen this picture. All right. It is called a stakini, S-T-I, and a whole bunch of other letters. And unlike what people think, as soon as they hear it, it's kind of like Whenever I say the word pukwudgie, people say, oh, you mean like hockey players giving each other wedgies? Oh, like I haven't heard that joke in 15 years. People always say stecchini sounds like an Italian dish. Or I can tell where your mind is. All right. Okay, how many of you guys are local from Florida? Or at least you've lived in Florida a long time? How many of you guys have lived in Central Florida, near the Ocala, or the town of Ocala? I know I have a Wildwood person here. Okay. Jess, I'm going to totally call on you. All right? All you guys who know, I am going to tell you a story. And if you can tell me what's wrong with this story, I will give you a free book. It's not one of my better books, but I will give you a free book. I'm just kidding. I'll give you an Ocala book. 1835. Tensions between the Native Americans, the Seminoles, and the American troops in Florida is at an all-time high, right? They have built this base called Fort King. Fort King, by the way, which is one of the most haunted places in Florida. They built this base, Fort King, and in this base, what it's done is kind of like be the kinder, gentler version of Indian relations. So across the street, there's this building where if you have a problem with a Native American or a Native American has a problem with you, you go to the center and they help you with it. But of course, now as you're starting to move these people out of your state and kick them out, the Native Americans hate this place. So they build Fort King to kind of be the military arm of this transition. So Fort King becomes this symbol of everything that's hated. US troops start to realize that they need to reinforce Fort King because it is a major hot point and it's probably going to be attacked. So what they do is they send, in late 1835, December 1835, they send 110 troops up what's known at that time as King's Road. Now it would be roughly where 40 is, so between 75 and 40 would be where King's Road is. They send 110 troops up to reinforce the people at Fort King. Does anyone know this story yet? Be quiet, you might win a book later. So don't say it yet. So, little did they know that in that forest, in the swamps, behind the trees, waiting for them on this road were the stecchini. So let's take a step back. What are stecchini? This is great. Stecchinis are, ready for this? Seminole, witch, vampire owls. Right? That sounds like they just took everything that freaks you out and put it in a blender, right? Because if one thing is like, I don't care about witches. I know people who are witches. Are they vampire owl witches? Chances are they're not, right? So these vampire owl Seminole witches were formed because men did them wrong. It's always men's fault, right? Men did them wrong, and so what they wanted was they wanted revenge, but they didn't want simple revenge, they wanted paranormal, supernatural revenge. So these witches, right, would pray to this goddess called She Who Walks the Circle. And they would get these powers to take vengeance on the men who had done them wrong. What did we learn about the book Animal Farm? Ultimate power? There you go. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Once these witches got a little taste of that power, they started saying, yeah, well, that person did something wrong too, so I want to use my power to get revenge. And you know what? We had a really bad crop, so I want to... Which was all part of the goddess's plan. Because with every spell that they cast, every single time that they used their special power, a little bit of their humanity would wash away until eventually they became the stecchini. They lost all of their humanity, by night especially, and they became these owl vampires who had to stalk the night to look for human victims to drink their blood and eat their intestines. No, it's okay. Because, the blood, because the intestines were made into a soup. Right? So, and of course, they would have their hearts as well. Now, enough women had done this that there actually was a coven that was formed. And they hid right outside the Ocala, right, in parts of the Ocala and parts of the Green Swamp. in that route between Fort Brooks in Tampa and Fort King in Ocala. So 110 men start down the road looking to reinforce, making sure that the big bad Americans can throw out the Seminoles. And they run across trial after trial after trial, right? What was supposed to be a clear path was not a clear path at all. Little did they know, Osceola especially, and his little band, had kind of met all these little traps along the way. They knocked down bridges, they put things in the way, so it was hard for them to travel. First day out, everything goes fine. Until the nighttime, when they start to hear this screeching from the woods. They wake up, 5 men have been killed. Mysteriously disappeared and assumed killed. The next day, they're walking along the path and people keep reporting seeing these absolutely beautiful women in the woods. Beautiful enough to make them kind of hypnotically start going into the woods to follow them. When they camp that night, 5 more have disappeared. Now they're starting to see if there's something going on. Right? Women, right? I know. The next night? No, the next night 10 disappear over the course of the night. So now there's 20 gone. Right? Now they know that there's something going on. But the next day, they're still walking. They're still walking on their way to Ocala. And they're seeing these beautiful women in the woods. And some of the men are pointing it out, like, do you see her? Do you see her? And only some of the men can see it. And some of the men follow, and some of the men don't follow. But by the time the next day rolls around, 30 total soldiers have disappeared. Now they're holding guard. People are staying up at night, they're waiting, and all they can do is hear these howls. And not only these howls, but these screams which seem to be from a woman. So men are kind of tempted to go out there, they're gonna follow it. Until finally, the next morning comes, and 50 total soldiers have disappeared. Now one guy completely freaks out, a guy by the name of James Sprague. He decides, this is it, this is definitely not gonna happen, I'm not gonna be one of these people, and he goes AWOL, right? And he's going through the woods, and it's dark out, and he's going, he's trying to escape, and he comes upon a coven of these Stikini. And as he looks at them, he sees the arms and the legs and the heads of the fellow soldiers that he had been friends with, scattered along the ground. He sees their hearts being squeezed into the witches' mouths as they drink the blood. He smells the intestines from inside the cauldron as they're stirring it, making their intestine soup. I'm not sure if it's an intestine soup or an intestine chowder, but one or the other. I'm not sure what the difference is. And he freaks out. He hides behind a tree, right, until the day finally, breaks. The Stikini kind of disappear because they can become beautiful women by day, disappear, float away, and he runs back to Fort Brooks. He is the only man to have survived the trek. He reports back what he sees to Fort Brooks, and he's illiterate, so they write down his report, and that becomes known as the Dade Massacre. Anyone want to say anything?
Hey, could you tell us more about the Jeepers Creepers curse?
Do I have time to tell people about the Jeepers Creepers curse? Tell you what.
3 minutes. 3 minutes.
3? I can't do it in 3 minutes, but do it quickly. All right.
Take your shirt off.
There once was a pen. I don't know how to do that. So how you guys have seen the movie Jeepers Creepers? How do you guys know that it was filmed in Florida? Okay, so pretty much every Florida shooting location associated with that movie is crazy haunted and has things that'll completely make you freak out. The hardest of which, or so I should say the spookiest of which, is an area known as Tiger Trail Road. It's Route 180, it runs through Dunlin, Florida. If you watch the movie, when they're driving at the very beginning, and that creepy stretch of road, that's this stretch of road. It's at the end of that road, which you don't see is a high school. The man who made the film, whose name I can't remember, thanks for putting me on the spot.
Victor Salva, he sucks anyway.
Victor something.
Yeah, he sucks anyway.
Yeah, so before he made Jeepers Creepers, he served time for being a sexual offender. He actually was having, not only was having, thank you for the music, that was awesome. But he also filmed it all and was caught with child pornography. He was and actually went to jail and served time for it. So people believe that there's actually a curse on the movie itself. So this one place it's called Tiger Trail Road because the local high school is tigers. It's considered to be one of the most haunted roads in Florida. If you drive down this road, you can see a man who looks very much like the Jeepers Creepers character. It's a dark man, pretty much like solid, we all know dark men, right? It's like solid fog. Sometimes wearing a hat, sometimes wearing a hood. You see black-eyed kids who try to get into your car. So you're not coming with me tonight to go check this out? Is that what's going on? Oh yeah, you see still those, yeah. But also, one of the things that's crazy, and this has changed in recent times. If you go there and you go right to that intersection and you turn off your lights, and then you turn your lights on again, this dark figure will appear down the road. And then you turn your lights off, you turn it back on, it's a little bit closer. So if anyone knows, this is mimicking modern mythology, right? It'd be the Midnight Man, and who's the other guy who I'm thinking of? Can anyone tell me my name?
Hat Man.
Well, no, I'm talking specifically in the last 3 years, this idea of turning off the lights, turning it on, closing your eyes, opening your eyes, closing your eyes, opening your eyes. The only way to get rid of this person and guarantee that he doesn't follow you home is to do it in reverse, right? So now you gotta go high beams, go off, and like this, and it'll go further away, further away, further away, further away, until he finally disappears, and then you can go home. Or you can go down the road, take a left onto 40, and you can visit the other haunted location associated with it, which you can only find out about if you buy my book, which is right over there.
Yeah.
And where's Ruby? Ruby.
Here comes Dave.
Okay. And, yes. Come on. And we also have Ruby Brew. She's our 7th member. David. Okay.
Ruby Roo.
Thank you for everything you've done for us. So we would like to present you with a little plaque of our appreciation.
Oh, that's so nice. So nice. I appreciate that.
You can put in your shot.
You earned it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Can you hold it up? Yeah. Show it to everybody. Yeah. Nice.
That's rad.
What does it say? It says, to David Shealy from Mid-Florida Bigfoot Research Group.
Awesome.
And it's a 4-toed print.
Yeah.
So, thank you. You've been wonderful.
This has been one of the greatest days of my life. I'll never forget it. I appreciate everybody coming.
I'll start off real quick. Ocala National Forest, you wanted to hear about that. So one of the coolest things was during COVID. COVID started, the forests were closed down, allegedly, for like 2 months or so. But when the forest department said, oh, the forests are now open, me and my friends dashed to Ocala just to see, oh, you know, nobody's been in the woods. Let's go see what we find out there, right? So, you know, we go there, we see a bear just walking down the middle of the street. You know, it's not used to having people around. So, didn't see anything unusual. We went back like a week later, and the trail that we went on before is the trail that we always go on. There were 5 brand new trees that were freshly broken and thrown across the trail. 5 of them. One right after the other. It's like, what the heck happened in a week, you know? And one of the, there was a little tiny pine tree sapling that was next to it. That was bent over and secured underneath one of the trees that was on the ground. And we're like, oh my God, you know, there's just so much, all of a sudden, the week before, nothing. A week later, all kinds of stuff. And then to the left of that was a huge X. A huge X about like 8 feet tall. So we had the X to the left, we had 5 freshly broken trees along the path, the trail, and then the pine tree was secured down underneath one of the trees. It was so crazy. So that's one of my favorite stories. Go ahead.
What was the X made of?
It was just
trees.
Just trees.
Trees, okay,
Yeah.
like crisscross.
Yeah, crisscross,
Yeah.
just to the left. And then all the trees on the path were right in front of us, and we're like, what happened, Bart?
Did you leave? Or
No.
Did you kept going?
Of course, hello. Do you not know me? Do you not know me? Yeah.
He knows it.
It's in between Fort McCoy and Salt Spring. So, yeah, that's where we always, when we go there, that's the first place we go, down this one trail. And it's because every time, not every time, but most of the time we go there, there's always something different out there. So then, a year later, we go back out there, and there is a structure that looks like a freaking wall. It was massive. There were 2 trees that were broken off. They're parallel next to each other. They're the same height, about 10 feet. There was all kinds of X's in it, and there were some huge arches over the top of it. It looked like a wall. And we're just like, oh my God, this is so crazy. We just went back there a week ago. It's gone. Not a trace of this. Everything was taken down. All the broken trees were gone. Everything was gone. Like it never happened. So something is out there. Something is doing things out there. And Ocala is one of my favorite places.
Well, I'm a skeptic.
Not anymore.
Yeah. Experiences will do that to you. But actually, me and Des had an experience and encounter together, and that kind of changed my mind. So, it's an active location currently. We won't disclose the location because it's an active location. We don't want anybody going out causing issues with the skunk apes, with the Bigfoots. Any hoaxing possibly could occur as well, so that's why we keep it quiet. But it all kind of starts out with us making a phone call. Des says, hey, listen, let's go out tomorrow morning early. I go, all right, let's do it. 4 o'clock in the morning, we meet approximately, leave the houses, get there, go out in the woods, and it's dark. Going down the dirt road, and what was that you heard?
We heard a series of whistles that sounded like a human whistling at us. So I initially, of course, get covered in goosebumps, but feared there was other people out there that we didn't see their cars when we parked. We didn't see any boot prints on the trail up to that point. And the only other place that they would have entered that area would have been from the main road. The whole road we drove down, there were no cars on the side of the road. So I'm fearing that there's other people in the woods whistling at us. It sounded like a human whistle, and we have it on audio. We heard those whistles in that first location 3 times. So in that moment, we stop, set everything down on the trail, and listen. Troy gets out his night vision, and we're trying to be so extremely quiet, because everything you do, the zipper of your bag, the swishing of your pants, the way you breathe weird, if you're talking louder than you should, could mess up that entire moment. And we stayed in that moment, in that exact spot, for about 30, 40 minutes waiting for more noises to happen. And when we decided to move on.
So while we're waiting there, I'm going through my head, I'm thinking to myself, whistles were toward north, we're heading west, and I'm thinking tactically, okay, so are they gonna continue moving? If they move west, then we know it's something else. So we packed up the stuff, didn't see anything with night vision, we continue moving west, and the whistles followed. So the original whistles stopped, the whistles followed. As we go further along, more whistles with a crunch, brush snapping, could have been a knock, a pop, not sure. Stopped, we're listening again. Des was carrying her green headlamp down by her hip. And what did you say?
I said, Troy, is that a footprint? And we looked down and we shined the green headlamp, which works out really well in the dark on this type of substrate, red or green. White makes it a little too bright. And we stepped back and we stopped in that moment and shone the flashlight around, and were able to find a series of tracks going both ways.
Wow. How many?
In the first location, there were 13. Second location, there were 6. So, as we're looking at that, this is the very first one. So the only way this caught my attention was because of the impact the toes had gripping that substrate. The toes grabbed that shell and sand top of the clay trail and made that impression. That's the only reason it caught my attention. Up from that area, right by that print, the very first one we found, was some shuffling in the trail, like something had moved. And this trail is very hard to make any type of impressions with our own boots, because there's not much to leave an impression on when it's not wet, when it's not, smushy or mushy. So our theory is, and it's totally just a theory, in the very front of this track, or front of the trackway we found.
So the substrate, I'm going to just back up a little. Substrate is hard clay. It's solid clay underneath. Crushed shell with crushed rock with sand. That's what they were stepping on. Approximately a 1/4 inch thick. Sorry, a 1/16 inch thick. 1/4 inch in other places. So as we're looking at these things, don't forget, I'm a skeptic. I am now looking at a footprint in the middle of nowhere that's got all the telltale signs of a juvenile Bigfoot. To be honest with you, I stepped back, I go, that's a footprint. And I cannot tell you how many times I said that. That's a footprint. This is a footprint. It took me 3 days to get over this. I'm serious. Because we tried to debunk it in every way possible. Couldn't do it. Did finally send it out to some experts, waiting for some words back. But as that shuffling was occurring, we see tracks going back the other way. So the thought was, the whistling was the adult Bigfoots contacting the little ones that were on the road, letting them know that we were there, and they headed back. Now we traced those prints back approximately a 1/4 mile west of where we were, and that's where we picked up the other 6 tracks. So it's still an active location. There are some other things that are occurring. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Sure. So we gathered we made all the measurements per Meldrum's recommendation.
6 hours of documentation. So we spent 6 hours. That day we were out there for almost 11 hours total by the time we got there in the morning and by the time we left that day. So it was 6 hours of documentation. I just want to point that out. So it's not like, oh, we have maybe footprints, take pictures, and move on with your life. That's how serious we are about this. You don't just accept those photos as evidence, because we know that's not. You have to measure everything. And you follow the guidelines of who we believe are the experts in the field, right? And so that whole period of time, when we find the very first track, so much was going through our mind. Our team is always thinking of everything possible we can. What do we hear? What do we see? What do we smell? Every sense you can think of should be heightened in those moments. So as we're looking at the tracks, we're thinking, are they looking at us? Do we smell anything weird? Is there something else we should be doing? You're not prepared for that moment. We were not prepared for this moment. We took our time processing it, putting everything together before we told everybody else, because we didn't want to give them something we didn't believe was true. So we're looking into, those shoes where people's fingers or toes fit in there, and the runners, right? Like, how big do those come in? Do people run on the trail like that? We've run into runners there several times since then, and she usually runs the time we're there. She's wearing a boot. She tells us everything. Like, I'm usually the only one here. These are the hours I go. So you look at everything. You look at everything as a possible option and evidence, because once you put that out there, there's a point of no return in this field, right? So that's why it hasn't been on our group page yet. We want to make sure we're doing this due diligence, because we really do think it is something. And we put what goes on the page we think is something. That's the only reason it's on that page, and the web page, and YouTube. Since then, though, since that day, we've been back every weekend. And it has just been Troy and I. It's just been the two of us. Everything happens for a reason. It was obvious. Stick with what you're doing. Don't change anything. Go at the same time. Go when it works. Follow what you've been shown. Since then, we've caught a series of growls. Growls that were so close to us, in my opinion, because sound is so hard to track. I was thinking, goodness, we have feral people in the woods whistling to us. That was my first thought the time we heard the whistles. There's a bear or a panther about to attack us. When we heard the growls, our night vision showed us absolutely nothing near us. No eye shine when he shone his flashlight around. No eye shine, nothing. And we stood there in the trail, and at one point I got down behind him out of fear something was going to attack us. So we heard growls the weekend after. The following weekend, my apologies.
So we heard the growls, and when the growls occurred, we were listening to multiple. And I'm going to try to simulate, just like that, repeated. So I turned on my night vision, growls stopped. So did they see the red from the night vision, or did they see the beam? The cone. The shrubs in this area was about this high, if anybody can see. So nothing big is going to be hiding in there, unless it's way back 75 yards to the swamp area. Now, if they're back that far, I get it. We waited longer. The growls moved west. So you can see that they're at a further distance, quiet. Much less sound. After that, we took a look in it once the light came up. We went down, tried to investigate. Couldn't find any tracks. We didn't hear anything leave. So was there two there of something? One stopped growling, the other one started, or did that one move and we didn't see it or hear it? We don't know.
And then the most recent time out, that's most recent, right? We were on the same trail, same time of day, same time of week. We decided to sit on this tree that's down. We've left a few gifts there in that location. We usually leave cereal bars, something for them to eat when we leave as a thank you. And then we've been leaving some gifts. The gifts are still there. They have not taken them, which is quite okay. Sitting on the tree, not much is happening. Very typical morning. The sun is coming up, and I hear something in the very far distance. It sounded like something falling out of a tree, part of a tree coming down, branches coming down. And it was more of like a two series of that. In the very far distance, it was super loud. Within 2 to 4 minutes after that, we hear what we believe are a series of whoops. And they were very, very prominent whoops. The first one we heard we caught all of this on audio, very, very distinct. The other ones after that were a little bit more quiet, so I don't know if they were further away or they moved. We've been comparing all of our audio to things that would make sense. Our research is showing us that often whoops will sound like gibbons. We've compared audio of gibbons to the whoops we have caught, and they are almost eerily similar to each other. We went back and looked at video footage from previous episodes of things where whoops have been caught, and very, very similar sounds. So once again, doing your research, making sure that this seems legit, right? Because you want it to be legit. You can't make it legit if it's not legit. And most recent, that's anything else I missed?
Yeah. So a lot of stuff's going on. So we're documenting all this information. We're keeping it logged in. But let's flash back to the whoops. So it was a whoop. 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 Waited X amount of time. Is there a bird? A little bit longer. Whoop. Again, it wasn't a series. It wasn't a tone. It wasn't bird related. We heard final whoop. That was it. So we waited a little bit, sat there. Once it got light, we decided to go exploring. Okay, so we wanted to go in this one area. We kind of locked out our path per GPS, how we're going to go through it and locate the area that we believe the whistles came from, the whoops came from. And as we did that, we broke into an area where it was pretty swampy. Now, it was dry, it was wet, damp, but the grass would say about this high. Sawgrass, I think it was. Not sure. So as we're going back through there, all of a sudden we come across what we thought originally was a hog trail. Well, this hog trail, we still haven't completed our research, so please take this with a grain of salt. But typically, we have seen hog trails that are maybe a foot wide, just a single foot wide, because they can make their way through that trail. They've got little ones, they'll follow. Well, this trail was 2 feet wide. We measured it, it's 2 feet wide. It's enormous. Couldn't believe how big this thing was. And it went from one water location to another water location. We also saw deer in there and pig. We actually saw them that day. So to us, there's something obviously going on here. And it's going to take more investigation to figure out exactly what it is, but we have high hopes for it. Did I miss anything?
Nope, more than excellent. Thank you.
On my own. So I went back to a spot. I'll share, I guess the scary stories are funnier and more entertaining. So I've only had 2 of them that were scary encounters, and I said one of them earlier. So this time I was with my dog, and her name's Miley. If you ever seen our videos, we have Miley with us sometimes. And I would take Miley with me because I like to take her for nice long walks, and I like to go out and explore by myself sometimes. My son's extremely loud. So where I had to park, this is all part of a Cypress Creek Preserve. It runs basically about 20 miles from up in Pasco County down into Hillsborough County. And I have different parts of it that I go into and check out. So this day, I found a place to park, and it's about 1.5 miles into where I wanted to go and investigate. So I walk all the way around, and I get up into my spot, and I found some cool things, and I just found some other really awesome. I found like what I thought were beds and some other type of little cool structures. I come back out to the trail, and it's like a 4-wheeler trail. I followed that trail, and I found a footprint. And the footprint, I measured it, it was 19 inches by 10 inches wide. Huge, huge footprint. 48 inches in front of it, another one. Exact same size, everything. And it looked like the mud was 2 inches thick coming out from where it stepped, and it just pressed it up from the size of its body. You know how heavy it was. At that moment, my meter went off, and it said, don't go any farther. And I never listened to it. This time I did. There's 19-inch footprints on the ground. Something is going that way, and I don't think I should go there. So I took my phone out, and I did my pictures and everything. I'm good. Put my phone back in my pocket, and Miley's just stopped, and she's staring in that direction. I'm like, shoot, I almost got out. And she starts doing this real low growl, just. And then I heard, to me, what sounded like a stomp. It just, boom. I felt it. I was like, what the hell? She jumped in too. And about 10 feet, or I'm sorry, about 40 yards, the bush line was about 10 foot tall. So you can't see into it. It's super thick. You can't see into it. But there's 2 or 3 trees that were coming up out of it. And right after that stomp, the middle tree moved. I said, you gotta be kidding me. And it did it again. And it did about 2 more times, and the entire tree that was 40, 50 foot tall hit the ground. Then followed by, Miley turned and tried to hang herself on her own leash. I yelled at it, I'm leaving. I'm trying to not run. Oh, she can't run, it's a predator. So I'm walking, trying to get out of there, clenched. I literally got so scared. There was one person on earth that knew where I was at. I called him, and he said I was crying. I don't believe him. But it's possible. It's possible. So I said, Craig, you're the only person who knows where I'm at. Remember I told you I wanted to go to that one place way back in the park back there. You told me don't go by myself. Well, I went by myself. Something's chasing me. It just pushed over a damn tree. I think I'm gonna die. I'm like, it'll take me 20 minutes to get back to my truck. If you haven't heard from me in 20 minutes, call my phone. If I don't answer, call again. If I don't answer that time, send the authorities to that location. That's where my body's gonna be. That's how terrified I was. This thing shook a 40-foot freaking tall tree like it was a little rag doll, and it went over. My dog knew we needed to get out of there. I actually I had a conversation one day with Dr. Jeff Meldrum, and I told him the story, and he said, that was probably the best thing you could have ever done, because I don't know if you want to challenge a Bigfoot. And I said, well, thank you. I wasn't going to. But, so anyway, that was probably my most terrifying one. I made my way back, nothing ever happened, but the funniest part too was I got back and there were 2 cops that were parked behind my truck, because I had parked next to a subdivision that I probably shouldn't have. And so I had to explain the whole story to the cops. The cops think I'm out of my gourd. But I probably looked like I was on drugs because my eyes were like, I was terrified. Yeah. So I tell the guy, I said, there's something back there and you need to watch people. Don't let them go back there. This is when I first started and I didn't have to meet the group or nothing. I was by myself. But that was my most entertaining one.
Thank you, Mike.
He got emotional again.
Oh, sure.
Nobody got any questions for Mike? Okay.
One of my incidents is when he started changing his batteries in his GoPro or something, and he handed me the thermal camera. So while he's changing his batteries, I'm just looking in it, and just kind of panning around, and all of a sudden I see a spot that looks kind of interesting. So I hold it on that spot for a few minutes, not sure how long it was, but there was something moving, and I'm not really sure how far it would have been away. Can you guess about that?
Thinking around 60 yards.
Yeah. So anyway, but there is something to me that looks like it is moving in the trees and brush back Cypress Swamp.
It's like reaching around the tree.
Yeah, it's like reaching around the tree, like you can see its hand.
And that footage is up too.
Yeah, and yeah, you can go on there and look at this footage I'm talking about. Yeah, and I know I probably held it there for like maybe 5 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, because you moved just a little and went back up to it.
And I'm just focusing on that spot. If you watch that video, other people and Tim, you can see other stuff around it that's moving, and the wind wasn't blowing like that.
No.
So.
And something's grabbing, like grabbing
Yeah.
the tree.
It's got it on black heat too, so it's
Yeah, so it shows up really good. Yeah. So.
the trees look grayish almost, and you just these dark black images,
Right. So that was pretty interesting for me. I was just sitting there just kind of goofing off while he was changing his batteries, and I just happened to see that.
That was just a month ago, right?
Yeah, like a month. Yeah. Yeah. So I just thought that was pretty awesome.
And not only that, but in that one area there that day, we were finding 6-inch footprints, 11-inch footprints, 14-inch footprints, all that were within a couple days old, 2 to 3 days old. Yeah, right there in that area where she called the movement. Yeah, breeding population. Yeah, we're finding 6-inch footprints that are like this. That even me with my feet being twice as big, I got to step way out there to match it. Yeah, 6-inch footprints. Yeah, and a lot of the footprints we're finding 4-toe footprints, and we're finding 5-toe footprints. Wow. So a lot of like David Shealy, he finds a lot of 4-toe footprints down in Everglades, and we're finding like more towards the Gulf in Pasco County, we're finding 4-toe footprints. And then in Green Swamp, we're finding 4-toe and 5-toe. We're finding a mixture. So I think we're having both Bigfoot and skunk ape. Yeah.
What, one has 4 and the other has 5?
Yes. One has 4 and one has 5. I think the skunk ape actually has the 4 toes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, and the Bigfoot.
Like the 5th one's not like up the leg.
No.
Even the shape of them are kind of different. Too.
Yeah, a little different. Yeah.
Their toes are longer.
Yeah. And they
Any
have
webbing
the
in
human
between
shaped
the
foot.
toes, the fork toe? Any webbing in between?
No webbing. No, not in the ones I've seen. No webbing. No. It looks almost like a human step there, but bigger and wider. Yeah. So that's one thing. With being a hunter like I was for so many years, and now I've turned around and instead of hunting animals, now I'm hunting the Bigfoot, skunk apes. I've learned what to look for. Where in the past when I was hunting, I was looking for animal tracks, and like if I'd have seen a boot print or a footprint, I wouldn't have paid no attention to it, unless it was just an area that I hunted all the time and I knew somebody else had been in there. But like with me, I'm learning. I've been doing this almost 3 years. I've found all kinds of footprints. I have one area where I found two years ago, I was finding 6-inch footprints and 9-inch footprints. Now I keep going back in the same areas, seeing the same footprints, because I've learned by reading the ground that they're staying in that area. Yeah, now they're bigger. Now they're 11 inches and between like 12 to 14 inches. Yeah. So just being out there, watching the ground, tracking, learning all the different animal tracks, learning what to look for as far as human-looking feet, footprints that are barefoot, and learning the difference. Sometimes you'll see boot prints that can kind of be, you're wondering, is that a footprint, is that a boot print? But you learn, the more you're out there, the more you learn. And some of these areas we're in, where we're finding footprints, we're going in and there's whistling on each side of the trail. Sometimes I can tell, sometimes I can feel them watching us. Mike's a lot more sensitive to that. He can feel them a lot. Mike gets a pressure in his ears where he can feel them watching us, and with me it's more of a pressure on my head. And sometimes I can get a really light pressure, but it's more of hearing them. You can hear subtle movements over here following beside us, and then every once in a while you hear over here just like a human. And then over here on the other side of the trail you hear another just like a human. And they go back and forth. As we're going down the trail, they're paralleling us, and they keep doing the whistles back and forth. Just like that, just a human type sound. Yeah.
Mike, do you think it's like barometric pressure or something that?
I can't explain it. It happened to me ever
It's
since.
only in these spots.
It's only when I'm in those spots, and it's only happened since I got blasted by that one. My first time I was ever up by myself, and that thing did that low growl, and I had the migraine for 2 days, 3 days, and ever since then I get a pressure when I'm around there. And like Tim has a trifold mirror. He pull up the meter, and he's going into areas where there shouldn't be reading radio waves,
Yeah, it's like a microwave or your cell phones are putting out, cell phone towers are putting out, when there's nothing out there like that.
We're starting to kind of feel like that could be some type of defense system, and maybe that's why your camera things act funny or something. You're getting hit with something.
Yeah, the battery drains. Yeah, we have that happening.
We kind of proved that theory because the area that I go in a lot by myself, and I'm a believer that there's a family group in there that accepts me being in there. They're not going to come out and be like, hey, hang out with you, but they're more active. I get really cool pictures, a lot of footprints and things. Like they follow me and my son around. And microphone. Oh, sorry. But so when they took the meter, we go into their area of the meter and it goes off at different times. We go into my area and the meter didn't go off one time. I said, "Do you have your meter on?" He's like, "Yes, I know they're here." He's like, "I know, the meter hasn't moved." And I'm, all right. We're over where we were looking at the campground. We were checking we were trying to check a picture that Tim had got that looked like something was in a tree. So we went back to go look at that, and me and Wynette were kind of off to the side. The meter goes off, like peaking out, maxing out to like dangerous levels, and I'm like, holy cow! I was just joking around because I make noises and act goofy out there. And they said I'm like the whisperer. And I'm like, all right, guys, we're not here to hurt you. And I was like, ooh, we're good. We're not going to hurt you. The meter shut off. Dead. That quick. Boop, it died. Didn't go off again the rest of the day. It was like they said, okay. They're okay. It's on camera too. It's like, holy, it's like, no, that's okay. They're okay. It's fine. It's really unique. Like, that just really happened?
Yeah, and usually Mike is the only one that makes any sounds when we're out there all that. Normally the rest of us, we don't make any sounds, but Mike has heard them, and he knows the kind of sounds to make, yeah. And it seems to calm them down, yeah. And
It's
they
like,
know.
I don't know what that call says, but it's like a peaceful sound, and it does something. That sound does something when you're in the woods, and it sounds different than if you're just like here and you're going, you know, or something. But if you're in the trees, it's like, it carries through the trees, and it sounds really like a big-chested, deep animal. It sounds really cool, but I think it's like a happy sound.
When we're separated from you, you like look at each other, and they're like, oh, it's Mike, and I'm like, ooh, crap. It's very really good. Yeah, it sounds very
and it like carries through the trees. Yeah. It's really neat. It's really, really neat. Oh, sorry. They're recording just one person.
Yeah.
I had to think of, I think my favorite one, besides Mike also calls in the alligators. Thank you. I will say it was not too long ago, and the video was on our website also, and I think you posted it, was the one with the deer bones. We were way off trail, and so we were going through the swamps, and some was water, some wasn't. We found our waterproof boots were no longer waterproof. But anyway, so I had gone off in a little different direction, and I came upon some deer bones. And Wynette is our bone girl, so I said, come over, we gotta check out the bones. So it was a deer, and we were talking about the deer, and I could just step back, and I saw that there were 3 like rib bones just stuck shoved in the ground. Yeah, and if you started, well, there were there was one this way and 2 kind of angled in. So when you started to pull the middle one, the other one started, they would move too. And that was just something that's not, how does that happen?
Almost like something was eating, and it just took the bone and just shoved it in the ground.
Stuck it in,
Yeah.
and that's my story.
Yeah, it was a great find, Because, deer bones, they're just laying on the ground, they're just there. So it's like, what the heck? You've got these 3 bones just shoved in the ground, off to the side. Like something was just eating and just shoved it in the ground.
So like they would sit by the tree, back on the tree. Yeah.
I had a question for you.
Oh, what?
I wanted you to tell everybody about that boneyard that you walked in.
Oh, no, I've already done that. No. So we cast it, walks away, comes back, there's like finger drags.
They had come right behind me, and like wanted to see what I was doing. It's like the whole family came by real quick and went,
Like, oh, what's this?
look, different sizes.
Curious.
See, look, different sizes.
And they found a hair. They actually found a hair in there. Well,
I love the
he's got a
the infant ones.
Big male probably walked by and went like this.
Anyway, so that's really cool. Like, they just saw this sitting there, like, what's that? And they
I came back and I'm like,
I love the small ones, man. This is pretty cool too.
It is, yeah.
I always go back to.
We're at the Punta Gorda Library, where the spirit of Birdie has been seen. Birdie used to live right here, and her old walls still stand. She had a really bad condition that made her walk really messed up, and only at nighttime. So nowadays they see orbs mimicking her movements. I hope she heals up, and I hope she is resting in peace. What a beautiful place. We're here at History Park in Punta Gorda, where they have a bunch of old buildings, and during Christmas they of course deck this place out with festive colors and extravaganza. Well, one year the Baker ghost story had to deal with a bunch of Santas being face down. Eventually she ended up calling out and pleading, and they eventually let her be. But wow, you could just feel the vibes right here in the center of these historical artifacts. Watch for falling coconuts. Yeah, I'll knock some sense into you. We're here at the dog park in Punta Gorda, Hounds on Henry, and this place has a really cool ghost story that at 6:53, all the dogs start acting weird. Sadly, I was a little after that, but very cool to see the place alive and well. A lot of tennis balls and holes. It's exactly what I was seeing at a dog park. Yeah, yeah. We're at the Ellen Spa and Salon in Punta Gorda, and this place actually used to be a bank, and it's full of high strangeness. They'd start finding product bottles on the ground, so then they set up security cameras, and they literally witnessed them just flying off the shelves. This area has abundance of energy. You can just feel it pulling up. We are on I-75 in Lake Panasoffkee, where in 1971, Little Miss Lake Panasoffkee was discovered by two hitchhikers. They found her halfway submerged in the water. It's believed that she was tossed over the bridge. Sadly, she was found with a size 36 belt around her neck. That is probably how she was killed. Her killer and her body, her name, her alias, has never been discovered. One of the most mysterious cases to ever exist. Payne's Prairie is one of my favorite locations in the state, and I'm about to check out the snake wall. It's really cool how the eye overlooks the prairie and the highway. I've seen this on a couple websites online, so really cool that I had to go to the bathroom, pull it off, right at my favorite spot. Magical. Now I'm climbing up the snake, testing the serpent. Whenever I'm at Payne's Prairie, I'm doing something. That's what's my favorite part about it, man. I'm either driving from Lakeland, see my homie in Melbourne, just traveling. And as you can see, that's a thick forest. And during certain times of the year, you really get a good view of the prairie. I know where I'm having my next picnic. Wow, this is amazing. I love how the rails make the serpent eyes. Wow. This trip is already starting off legendary, guys. Do I dare pull off in Dade City? Home of the robotic alien flowers. In 1924, a girl named Evelyn saw a strange spaceship land in her backyard. Out crawled these little flower aliens. They were assembling a huge gun or equipment. They relayed the information that there were strange experiments going on in town and they were going to put an end to it. But then after setting it up, they disassembled it and told Evelyn that they will be back. Wow. Shout out to Minutes in the Mist, Within the Mist, Gary Brand. Great information.
Flesh of the unguided and non-believers fuel this void.
Hey, I'm Connor from Bigfoot Anon, and I'm always on the hunt for the next big adventure. When you're on the trail for long hours, you build up quite the stench, enough to drive any skunk ape or yeti away. Luckily, I'm on the quest now for the solution to all my problems. Yeti bars. They do exist. Available in tons of different scents and fragrances. Check out yetibars.net for more and use my code BA10 for a special offer. Clean like a beast. Yeti bars!